The snow had been falling since late afternoon, thick and silent, blanketing the quiet street of Oak Ridge Lane in Boise. By the time Angela left for her night shift at the hospital, the whole neighborhood felt wrapped in white cotton. Mark stood at the doorway watching her taillights disappear, rubbing his hands together against the cold. Inside the house, the heater hummed and the kids were already in pajamas, sprawled across the living room floor playing with Misty, their Australian shepherd who was due to give birth any day now, according to the vet's estimate. But neither Mark nor Angela expected any day to mean tonight. It began with a low, uneasy whine from Misty. Liam looked up first. "Dad, she's breathing funny." Chloe scooted closer, concerned. Misty shifted her weight, circling her blanket twice before collapsing onto it, her sides heaving. Mark knelt beside her, his heart rate spiking. "Easy, girl. It's okay." He'd helped Misty deliver once before. But this felt different, more urgent, more intense. By the time the first puppy slipped into the world, the snow outside had turned the windows into frosted glass. Liam was bouncing in excitement, Chloe covering her mouth as she watched Misty lick the tiny body clean, nudging it to her side. Then came another, and another. The kids were counting in whispers now, as if afraid to break whatever magic had settled in the room. 3, 4. "Dad, there's another one." Mark nodded, sweat gathering at his temples despite the winter chill. "She's doing great. Just keep talking to her." Misty pushed again, and the 5th puppy arrived. Then the 6th, the 7th. Mark's breath caught. This was far more than Misty had ever carried before. He grabbed his phone and called Angela, who answered breathlessly between tasks at the hospital. "7 already?" she cried. "Mark, Hold on, I'll call you back." But the contractions didn't wait. 8, 9, 10. By now, Misty was trembling from effort. Mark stroked her side, whispering encouragement. Liam ran for more towels. Chloe fetched water, her small hands shaking, and the snow kept falling, muffling the outside world as if it didn't dare intrude. 11, 12, 13. Mark's eyes widened. He'd never heard of a litter this big. Misty was exhausted, but she wasn't done. With another shudder and one last desperate push, 2 more tiny forms arrived. 14, 15. When the final puppy slipped out, the room went still, stunned, breathless, almost disbelieving. 15 newborns lay gathered against Misty's warm belly, squirming softly, their tiny cries filling the room like faint little bells. Chloe clapped a hand over her mouth. Is it a world record?" Mark wasn't sure, but it certainly felt like a miracle. Within half an hour, the neighbors heard the news, mostly because Natalie, the 12-year-old next door who had been spying from her bedroom window, came running across the yard with snow still clinging to her boots. "My mom says she's never seen anything like it," Natalie squealed, already holding up her phone to film. "Can I put it on TikTok, please?" Mark laughed despite his exhaustion. "Just keep Misty out of the frame, okay? She's tired." Liam and Chloe hovered proudly over the puppies as Natalie hit record, narrating the moment in her excited, breathless voice. By the time she left, her cheeks red from the cold. The clip had already gathered a few thousand views. Inside, Misty curled protectively around her new family. Mark settled back on his heels, finally allowing himself to breathe. 15, he murmured. "I don't think anyone's going to believe this." But the room's warm glow dimmed the moment he reached for a towel near 2 of the newborns. Something about them made him pause. Their bodies were longer, thinner than the others. One didn't cry at all. It simply stared, its tiny eyes closed tightly as if resisting sound or movement. The other shook its head in slow, jerky motions, as though struggling to understand its own limbs. Misty sensed his hesitation. She lifted her head sharply, nudging those two closer beneath her chest, shielding them. The tiny animal under her seemed almost still. Too still. A chill slid down Mark's spine that had nothing to do with the winter storm outside. "Dad?" Liam asked softly. "Are they okay?" Mark forced a smile. "They're just tired. Long night for everyone." But when the house finally quieted and Chloe had drifted asleep on the couch, clutching a warm blanket, Mark watched Misty carefully. She kept glancing at those same two puppies, her ears rotating backward in a way that spoke of instinct. An instinct he couldn't quite read. One of them twitched suddenly, opening its eyes for a fraction of a second. Mark froze. Newborn puppies' eyes shouldn't open that early. Not on day one, not in a million years. But this one had. And what he saw in that moment, just a flash, made his stomach tighten. The eye didn't have the dark, cloudy softness of a newborn pup. It reflected light in a sharp, metallic way, like the gleam of an animal built for night. Mark blinked it away, convincing himself he was exhausted, imagining things. A gust of wind hit the window, rattling the panes. Chloe stirred. Liam rolled over on the floor, mumbling in his sleep. The room fell silent again, except for Misty's soft breaths. Then, from outside, a distant siren broke the quiet, a passing police cruiser making its rounds in the storm. Mark watched the red and blue reflection flash across the wall, momentarily lighting up Misty's face. She looked almost regal, fierce, as she tightened her circle around her litter. Mark swallowed hard, feeling the moment shift from miracle to mystery. Something wasn't right, but voicing that thought felt like cursing the fragile peace in the room. He stood, heading to the kitchen for more warm water when he remembered something he needed to say. Angela had been urging him to add a call-out for their growing online community, something encouraging but not too pushy. He glanced at his camera, still propped against the counter, and whispered softly into the quiet room, as if addressing the invisible viewers who always found comfort in stories like Misty's. If these stories touch your heart, don't forget to subscribe to Paws of Courage. Every click helps us share more tales of courage, compassion, and the incredible bonds that change lives. One dog, one human, one story at a time. The words felt oddly grounding in the strange, magical night. But as he turned back toward the living room, he stopped abruptly. The same puppy, the one with the metallic flash in its eye, had lifted its head again. No sound, no trembling. Just an eerie stillness, as if aware of its surroundings far sooner than it should be. Misty bent protectively over it, giving Mark a warning look he had never seen from her before. A look that said, "This is only the beginning." The storm eased by morning, leaving the neighborhood wrapped in fresh, untouched snow. The world outside looked peaceful, but inside the Dalton house, a restless tension had taken hold. Mark had barely slept, sitting in the recliner with one eye open, watching Misty and her impossibly large litter. He knew what he saw last night, the brief glint of a newborn's eye. But exhaustion made everything feel like a half-remembered dream. When Angela returned from her shift, still in scrubs and smelling faintly of antiseptic, she paused in the living room doorway. Misty lifted her head the moment she entered, ears perked, alert. 15? Angela whispered, stunned. "You weren't kidding." She knelt beside Misty, rubbing her ears. Misty relaxed under her touch, but only slightly. Angela smiled, but Mark saw the question appear in her eyes the moment she looked closely at the pile of puppies. "They're different sizes," she murmured. "Are you sure they're all okay?" Mark cleared his throat. Most of them seemed fine, a couple not as lively. Angela picked up the smallest pup, a reddish one with unusually long front legs, just as Misty rose halfway and leaned forward, letting out a low, vibrating sound from deep in her chest. Angela froze. "Easy, Misty. I'm just checking." Misty didn't back down. Her fur bristled, her eyes fixed on the tiny creature Angela held as though she feared it was being taken away. Mark stepped in quickly. "Here, honey, let me hold her. Misty's a little on edge." But the moment he reached for the pup, it let out a sound, sharp, piercing, almost like a whistle. Angela flinched. "That's not a normal cry." "Probably just hungry," Mark muttered, though he didn't believe it. Before they could examine further, Liam came sprinting from the hallway, phone in hand. "Dad, Mom, you gotta see this. The video Natalie posted last night already has like 30,000 views." Angela frowned. "What? From last night?" "Yeah, she put it online before bed. It's blowing up. Everyone's calling it the Boise Miracle Litter. Look." He shoved the phone toward them. The video showed Misty with the newborns, the kids squealing in excitement, snow falling beautifully in the window behind them. At first glance, it looked wholesome. But when Liam paused at the 12-second mark, Angela's stomach dropped. In the lower corner of the frame, one of the pups wasn't crying or crawling like the others. Instead, it lifted its head, steady, still, and turned directly toward the phone camera. Its eyes remained closed, yet its tiny face angled perfectly, as if it sensed the lens. "Why does it look like that?" Angela murmured. Mark swallowed. "Lighting, maybe. Shadows." Angela didn't answer. Instead, she exhaled slowly and handed the phone back. "Let's not jump to conclusions," she said, though her voice trembled. A knock echoed suddenly from the front door, startling everyone. Chloe, still in her pajamas, peeked out the window. "It's Natalie!" The girl rushed inside, breathless, clutching her phone. "You guys, the comments are getting weird. People are saying some of the puppies look like they aren't dogs." Angela stiffened. "What do you mean?" "Look," Natalie scrolled. Here, someone wrote, "Why do two of them move like ferrets?" And another person said, "Rewatch at Zebo 12, its head shape is wrong." And then, this one, "That thing is not a dog. Look at the jawline." Angela's face paled. Mark rubbed his hands over his jaw. He didn't like social media attention on something he couldn't explain. But the strangest moment came when Chloe tiptoed closer to Misty to pet one of the normal-looking pups. Just as she reached out, one of the odd ones, the longer reddish pup, shifted in a sudden, jerky motion. Chloe yanked her hand back. "It looked at me." "It can't look at you, sweetie," Angela said gently. "Their eyes are closed." "I know," Chloe's voice quivered. But it did. Mark watched Misty carefully. The mother dog placed her paw over the reddish pup and pulled all three of the strange-looking ones tight against her stomach. Angela caught the motion too. "Why is she separating them? She wasn't doing that before." "She did," Mark admitted. "Last night. Took them to the garage for a few minutes." Angela turned sharply toward him. "The garage? Mark, why didn't you tell me that?" "I didn't want to worry you before you got home." He paused. "I wasn't sure what I saw." Angela stared at him, then back at Misty. "This isn't normal maternal behavior. She's acting like those three need extra protection, or needed to be hidden." Mark didn't dare say it aloud. Before they could discuss further, Chloe gasped, pointing. "Dad, look!" The same reddish pup pulled itself forward, not crawling, not wriggling like the others, but dragging itself with its long front limbs in a disturbingly coordinated motion. It reached the edge of the blanket and lifted its head again. No sound, no shaking, just eerie stillness. That's not right," Angela whispered. Misty moved instantly, grabbing the strange pup gently by the scruff and pulling it back, tucking it beneath her chest, glaring at anyone who dared come closer. Mark tried to steady his voice. "Okay, we're all tired. Maybe this is typical for a litter this big. Some weaker, some stronger. Natalie suddenly blurted, "One time, my cousin's dog had a litter of 9 and none of them ever did that. That thing crawled like a little raccoon or something." Angela shot her a sharp look. "Natalie, please." But the girl's words hung in the air like smoke. The morning stretched on with tension growing thicker. Liam filmed a short update for his friends, but stopped abruptly when, on camera, one of the strange pups lifted its head again, turning toward the phone just like in Natalie's viral video. "That's freaky," Liam whispered. He turned the camera off. Angela stood. "I think we need to call Dr. Coleman. Today." Mark nodded reluctantly. "Maybe. But let's keep this quiet, okay? No more videos." He looked firmly at Natalie, who nodded sheepishly. "And nobody touches those 3 unless Misty allows it." As the house settled again, Angela knelt beside Misty one more time. "Girl, what happened out there?" she whispered. Misty looked back with an expression Angela couldn't interpret. Part fear, part warning, and something almost like sorrow. Outside, the snow brightened under the weak winter sun. Kids played down the road, voices echoing faintly. But inside the Dalton home, the air remained thick with questions no one wanted to voice. Then, as Natalie prepared to leave, something happened that froze all of them in place. One of the 3 strange puppies, its body still impossibly small, its limbs thin, suddenly let out a sound none of them had ever heard from a newborn pup. Not a whimper, not a squeak, a sharp, high-pitched trill, shrill and wild, something closer to the cry of a small creature in the forest than anything belonging in a warm suburban living room. Natalie's hand flew to her mouth. Liam stepped back. Chloe hid behind Angela's legs. Misty immediately covered the creature with her body, pressing it down gently as though afraid the sound might escape again. Mark reached for Angela's hand but didn't speak. No one spoke. And in the silent pause that followed, the joyous miracle of last night shifted, slowly, unmistakably, into the first threads of fear. By the second night, the house no longer felt like the same warm place where the miracle litter had been celebrated. Something had shifted, subtle at first, but impossible to ignore once you sensed it. Angela felt it most strongly. Every time she stepped into the living room, Misty watched her with an intensity she had never shown before, as if guarding a secret from even the people she trusted most. That evening, after the kids went to bed, Angela cleaned the kitchen while listening to the soft squeaks and whimpers coming from the living room. Mark sat on the couch, exhausted, staring at the fireplace that flickered weak orange light across Misty's fur. "Did you call Dr. Coleman?" Mark asked. "Left a message. They said he's at the clinic until noon tomorrow," Angela replied. Mark nodded, but his eyes never left Misty. "Something's off," he murmured. "She's separating them." Angela dried her hands and stepped into the living room to see for herself. Misty had pushed 12 of the puppies into a neat little cluster near the blanket's center, but the 3 strange ones, the long-limbed reddish one and the 2 others with sharper faces, were tucked beneath her chest, completely hidden. Angela took a cautious step closer. Misty stiffened immediately, her ears flattening. "Easy, girl, I'm not taking them," Angela whispered. But Misty didn't relax. Instead, she pressed her muzzle against one of the hidden pups, nudging it deeper into the shadows beneath her body. Angela exchanged a look with Mark. She didn't act like this with her last litter. "Not even close," Mark replied quietly. The clock ticked toward midnight. Snowflakes drifted past the window, making faint shadows across the walls. The house was still, the kind of stillness that heightens every breath, every sound. Then it began, a soft scraping noise, followed by another. Angela frowned. "What is that?" Misty's ears twitched, but she didn't move. The sound came again, tiny claws dragging across wood. Angela stepped forward and gasped. One of the strange puppies had crawled out from beneath Misty, not wriggling like a newborn, not fumbling blindly, but pulling itself forward with surprising control, its long front legs digging into the hardwood floor. "That's impossible," Angela whispered. "Newborns can't even support their own weight." Mark rose slowly from the couch. How did it get out from under her? The creature continued toward the edge of the rug. It lifted its small head, steady, unnervingly steady, and its muzzle twitched as though sensing the room in a way no newborn pup should. Angela crouched just slightly, unable to look away. Then the pup did something that made her spine tighten. It opened its mouth and produced a faint clicking sound, rapid and insect-like. Misty reacted instantly. She lunged forward, not with aggression, but with urgency, scooping the creature into her mouth with utmost care. She carried it across the room, her paws silent on the floor, and disappeared into the hallway. Angela's breath caught. "Where's she taking it?" Mark grabbed a flashlight. "She's heading toward the garage." They followed quietly. Misty pushed the garage door open with her nose, slipping inside as though she had done it 100 times. Mark and Angela exchanged a stunned look. How long had she been doing this? Mark slowly raised the flashlight and clicked it on. The beam swept across cold concrete, stacks of storage bins, tools, Christmas decorations, and then landed on Misty. She had placed the strange pup at the far corner of the garage, beside 2 folded blankets. As the flashlight moved closer, Angela saw faint smears on the fabric. She took a step, heart pounding. "Mark, those are paw prints, tiny ones." Misty circled the 3 strange pups, nudging them into a loose cluster. Then, to their astonishment, she touched each of their heads with her nose, once, twice, as if performing a ritual. "That's not normal dog behavior," Angela whispered. "She's teaching them something," Mark swallowed, "or protecting them from something." Before either could move, another sound shattered the silence. A long, low howl came from outside the garage door, so distant it echoed like a memory, yet close enough to freeze Angela mid-step. Misty's head snapped upward. The 3 strange puppies twitched, their tiny bodies reacting in a way that made Angela's blood run cold. Mark killed the flashlight instantly. "Don't move," he whispered. For a moment, none of them breathed. Then the howl faded, swallowed by the night air. When Misty finally turned back to her pups, she scooped them up again, one by one, and trotted past Angela and Mark as though nothing had happened, nudging the living room door open with practiced ease. Angela stared after her. "Mark, why is she taking them out here? What does she hear? What does she know?" Mark didn't answer. Back inside, Misty returned the 3 pups to their place under her chest and curled tightly around them. Her tail lay flat, her eyes sharp, scanning the room as if challenging anyone to come closer. Angela sank onto the couch. "This feels wrong. Misty's scared, and she's behaving like they're not the same species as the others." Mark reluctantly nodded. "I know." Their conversation was interrupted when someone knocked softly on the front door. 3 taps, deliberate and slow. Angela jumped. Mark approached cautiously and peered through the peephole. It was Mr. Harris, the retired hunter from 3 houses down, wearing a heavy parka and snow-dusted boots. His breath fogged the cold air as he waited, hands in pockets. Mark opened the door just enough. "Evening, sir." Harris tipped his hat. "Evening, Mark. Sorry to bother you this late." His eyes drifted past Mark's shoulder toward the living room. "Heard you had quite a night. 15 pups, huh?" Mark tightened his grip on the door. "Something like that." Harris leaned closer, lowering his mapachazi voice. "Listen, did you hear anything just now? Out by the woods?" Angela appeared behind Mark. "A howl." Harris nodded. "Wasn't a dog. Wasn't a coyote neither." Mark felt the hairs rise on the back of his neck. "What are you saying?" Harris hesitated, then spoke quietly. Back in '98, I saw something like this. A litter that didn't look right. Mama dog acted strange. Turned out she'd wandered too far into the Sawtooth wilderness. Something followed her back. Angela's voice cracked. Something what? Harris stepped back, glancing toward the woods. If I were you, I'd keep those pups close and keep your kids inside after dark. Then he turned and walked away into the snow. Angela shut the door quickly. The house felt colder now, even with the heater running. Mark whispered, "We're calling Dr. Coleman first thing in the morning." Angela nodded, her eyes drifting toward Misty, who was still staring at the hallway where the howl had echoed minutes before. For the first time, Angela realized Misty wasn't just protecting her pups. She was bracing for something coming, and whatever it was, it knew exactly where they lived. By the next morning, the peaceful hush that once surrounded the Dalton home had all but vanished. The sun had barely risen when Liam burst into the kitchen, phone in hand, panic tightening his voice. "Mom, Dad, Natalie's video, everyone's talking about it." Mark was pouring coffee, eyes still heavy from a sleepless night. Angela glanced up sharply. Misty lay in the living room, curled tightly around her litter, her gaze tracking every sound. "What do you mean, everyone?" Mark asked. Liam shoved the phone toward them. "It's at almost 200,000 views, and the comments, they're getting weird." Angela took the phone. Her stomach sank as she scrolled. Something's wrong with those pups. At 012, the one on the left moves like a wild animal. That's not a dog. Look at the jawline. Call animal control. That family's in danger. Her throat tightened. Why would people say this? Because you can see it, Liam whispered, the way one of them turns its head. Mark exhaled slowly. All right, we're taking the video down. But it was too late. Natalie had already deleted it, yet dozens of reposts were circulating under new titles. What are these things? Idaho family's 15-pup litter goes viral. Boise's mystery birth? Are these even dogs? Watch at your own risk. The internet had taken the miracle and twisted it into something airy. Angela tapped her fingertips on the table. This is getting out of hand. We need answers. Real ones. Before they could discuss further, the doorbell rang. Too early for comfort. Chloe peeked out the window. "It's Mrs. Dunley and her daughter," she whispered. Angela's heart dropped. Mrs. Dunley was known for gossip that spread faster than wildfire. Mark opened the door only halfway. "Morning. I'm sorry to intrude," Mrs. Dunley said, clutching her daughter's shoulders. "But I saw that video last night. Is it true? Misty had 15 puppies?" Mark forced a polite smile. "She did. And the unusual ones." Her voice lowered conspiratorially. "People online are saying you might have a predator hybrid in there. Should you really be keeping that in a residential neighborhood?" Angela stepped forward. "With respect, they're newborns, and they're harmless." Mrs. Dunley's eyes flicked toward the living room where Misty guarded her pups. "Well, you can't blame folks for worrying. Boise hasn't been the same since coyotes started wandering down from the hills." She tightened her grip on her daughter. "I hope you'll do what's right before someone gets hurt." Mark closed the door more abruptly than he intended. Chloe tugged on Angela's shirt. "Mom, why does everyone think our puppies are bad?" Angela knelt to her daughter's level. "Because sometimes people are afraid of things they don't understand." But even as she said it, she felt a cold weight settle in her chest. By mid-afternoon, things had taken an uglier turn. Liam and Chloe came home early from school, tearful and shaken. "They made fun of us," Liam said, his voice trembling with humiliation. "Kids were pretending to howl in the hallway. Someone asked if we live with monsters." Chloe clung to Angela, face buried in her coat. Angela felt anger pulse hot in her veins. This is getting out of control. Mark paced the living room like a man trying to outrun his own thoughts. Once Dr. Coleman gives us the results, we can put these rumors to rest. But was he sure? Last night's howl still echoed in his memory. At dusk, the Daltons' doorbell rang again. This time, it was 3 neighbors standing together, arms crossed, faces set with uneasy determination. Behind them, snow crunched as more curious onlookers gathered at the sidewalk. "Evening, Mark," said Tom Perkins, a middle-aged man with a deep frown carved into his forehead. "We're here because folks are worried." "Worried about what?" Mark asked tightly. "About what you're raising in there," Tom replied. "Those pups made a sound in that video I ain't never heard from a dog." He shifted his weight. "And someone said they saw you outside at midnight. Said the mother was acting strange." Angela stepped forward, protective fire in her voice. "Misty is a good dog. She's never hurt a soul." "We're not saying she has," Tom said. "But people talk. Some say you should call animal control. Others say we're in danger." Mark felt his jaw clench. "You're listening to rumors, not facts." "Then give us facts," another neighbor demanded. "What exactly were those things doing in the video? Why did that one move like a wild creature?" "We're handling it," Angela insisted. "Please go home." Tom sighed heavily. "Mark, Angie, you're good people. But if something happens, folks are going to blame you for not acting sooner." Mark opened his mouth, but before he could respond, a sudden sound drifted from behind him, a faint, sharp trill. The same chilling sound one of the strange pups had made in the garage the night before. The neighbors froze. Tom's face drained of color. That wasn't a dog. Angela stepped backward instinctively. Misty surged forward from the living room, planting herself between the visitors and her litter, her hackles rising. Tom slowly backed away. "You need to get that checked, Mark. Soon." The group retreated, whispering frantically among themselves as they walked back toward the streetlights. Mark slammed the door shut. For a long moment, neither he nor Angela spoke. Then Angela whispered, "It's getting dangerous. People are scared." Mark rubbed his face with both hands. "We'll talk to Dr. Coleman first thing in the morning." But Angela wasn't convinced that would be enough. Later that evening, after the kids had finally drifted off to sleep, Angela sat at the dining table sorting the mail. Most envelopes were routine bills. One wasn't. A plain white envelope, no return address. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Handle the problem before someone gets hurt. No signature, no explanation. Angela's hands shook as she set it down. Mark read it and went rigid. This is crossing a line. Before they could discuss it, Natalie sprinted across the yard and pounded on their door, breathless and pale. "Mrs. Dalton, you need to see this," she gasped. "Somebody uploaded a slowed-down version of my video, and they're saying one of the puppies opens its eyes." Angela felt the room tilt slightly. "It's at 500,000 views now," Natalie whispered. "People are terrified." Mark swallowed hard. "And what are they saying in the comments?" Natalie hesitated. "That your puppies aren't dogs, and that whatever they are, they shouldn't be here." Angela felt dread settle in her bones. Outside, the wind shifted, carrying with it a lonely, distant sound. Not quite a howl, not quite a cry, but unmistakably connected to the same eerie noise they'd heard in the garage. Angela locked the door, her voice barely above a whisper. "Mark, tomorrow can't come soon enough." By sunrise the next morning, the Daltons were running on little more than nerves and determination. Angela hadn't slept at all. Mark had dozed off for maybe 20 minutes in the recliner, still wearing yesterday's clothes. Misty had not moved from her post, curled protectively around her litter, her eyes never leaving the hallway as if expecting something or someone to appear. At 8:40 a.m., Mark's phone buzzed. Dr. Coleman, I can be there in 20 minutes. Don't move anything. Don't touch the pups until I arrive. That last line sent a cold ripple through Angela. Why would a vet warn them not to touch newborn pups? When Coleman's SUV pulled into the driveway, Angela felt her breath tighten. The snow crunched under his boots as he approached the door, but he wasn't alone. Behind him walked a young veterinary assistant, tall, composed, carrying a metal case of equipment. Coleman rarely brought help for house calls. Mark opened the door. "Morning, Doctor." Coleman nodded, offering a thin, pressed smile. "Let's take a look." His tone was polite, but his eyes, those gave everything away. He already suspected something. Maybe he had suspected it since the first phone call. Inside, Misty's ears shot forward the instant she saw him. Her muscles tightened, her tail stiffened. She positioned her body between the vet and her pups. Not aggressive, more like a soldier preparing for an unwelcome inspection. Coleman crouched several feet away, hands in plain sight. "That's all right, girl. I'm not here to hurt them," he murmured. Misty didn't blink. Angela swallowed hard. She's never acted like this before. "Not with you." Coleman nodded. "She knows I'm here about the little ones." He glanced briefly at the assistant. "Let's start with the main litter." Angela and Mark watched anxiously as Coleman examined the regular 12 pups. He checked their limbs, listened to their breathing, tested their reflexes. Everything about those seemed normal, healthy, even unusually strong. But Coleman's calm expression faltered the moment he turned toward the 3 strange pups tucked beneath Misty's chest. Misty growled. Not a loud snarl, but a deep, low vibration filled with warning. "It's all right, girl," Angela whispered. "Let him check." Coleman raised a hand. "Let her sniff me first." He moved slowly, giving Misty time to decide if she would allow it. She didn't. She lowered her head, teeth visible now, not bared, but close. Mark stepped forward. "Misty, it's okay. Let him look." The dog glanced at Mark, conflicted, torn between trusting her human and protecting whatever she feared was vulnerable or dangerous. Finally, she eased just enough for Coleman to approach. The vet carefully lifted the first strange pup, the reddish one with elongated front legs. He held it up to the light. Its eyes were still closed. Yet the tiny creature angled its head toward him with eerie precision, as though tracking him without sight. Coleman stiffened. "That's new." "What?" Angela whispered. He didn't answer. Instead, he examined its paws. The toes were longer than a typical puppy's, the claws darker, sharper. "Have any of these 3 shown unusual movement?" he asked. "Yes," Angela said immediately. "Last night one crawled across the floor. It pulled itself forward, with real strength." "That shouldn't be possible in a 6-day-old newborn," the assistant said quietly. Coleman nodded. "Not unless... Well, let me see the others." He lifted the second, then the third. Each had subtle differences from the litter mates. Longer limbs, sharper noses, dense yet coarse fur growing quicker than expected for newborn pups. Then, as Coleman leaned closer, the one in his hand let out a sound, a high, sharp trill. The same sound the Daltons had heard in the garage. Coleman's expression collapsed into something grim. He exchanged a tight look with his assistant. Angela stepped forward, panic rising. "What does that sound mean? Why do they cry like that?" Coleman set the pup down gently. Misty snatched it back instantly, shielding it with her body. The vet straightened, rubbing his palms along his thighs. "Tell me something. Has Misty been outside at night? Any chance she wandered off before you realized she was pregnant?" Mark hesitated. "She got out once. 2 days before she started showing signs. She was gone a couple hours. We thought she just chased deer again." Coleman inhaled sharply. "And your property backs up to the Sawtooth Access Trail, right?" Angela's heart lurched. "Doctor, what aren't you telling us?" Coleman pinched the bridge of his nose. "I don't want to jump to conclusions without tests, but I've heard reports in recent years, rare, isolated cases, of domestic dogs mating with wild canids." Mark frowned. "You mean coyotes? Wolves?" Coleman shook his head slowly. "No, not coyotes, and not wolves either." The assistant opened the metal case and quietly laid out 2 swabs, a small tube, and a sealed container. "I'd like to take samples," Coleman said carefully. "Blood, fur, saliva. Enough to compare genomes." Angela felt her breath falter. "What exactly are we checking for?" Coleman hesitated, too long for comfort. Finally, he said, "For signs of hybridization with something that shouldn't be in this area." "Shouldn't be," Mark repeated. "Like what?" Coleman lowered his voice. 20 years ago, there were reports of an unidentified canid species in the northern Sawtooth Wilderness. Larger than a fox, leaner than a wolf, with unusually high intelligence and... "One of the pups opened its eyes last night," Angela interrupted suddenly. "Just for a second, the way it looked." Coleman held up a hand. "Newborns don't open their eyes that early. If it did, that supports my concern." "And what concern is that?" Angela demanded. "That whatever Misty mated with wasn't a dog." The words fell like a stone in the quiet room. Mark's face drained of color. "You're telling me my dog gave birth to, what, some wild animal?" Coleman didn't speak, because silence said everything. Misty pressed tighter around the litter, trembling now, not with fear, but with fierce protectiveness. As if she understood. Angela's voice broke. "Doctor, are we in danger?" "That's what I need to find out," Coleman replied. "But I need those samples first. We won't know what we're dealing with until then." He reached forward with the swab, and Misty lunged, not to attack, but to block. Her body collided with Coleman's arm, pushing it away from the pup. She didn't bite, didn't growl. She simply placed herself between the vet and her newborns with unshakable determination. "Misty, stop!" Angela cried. But Misty ignored her, eyes burning with a silent warning. Coleman stepped back, shaken. "She won't let me take samples." "She's never acted like this," Mark whispered. "Not even during her last litter." Coleman exhaled deeply. "That only tells me one thing." Angela's hands trembled. "What?" "She knows they're different," he said softly. "She knows more than we do." For a long moment, no one moved. Snow tapped softly against the windows. The heater hummed through the vents. Finally, Coleman picked up his equipment. "I'll wait for you at the clinic," he said. "Bring the 3 unusual pups in as soon as you can, and do not let them outside, not even for a moment." "Why?" Angela whispered. Coleman looked toward the woods beyond their backyard, a long, uneasy glance. "Because whatever fathered those pups," he paused, "may still be out there." The drive to Dr. Coleman's clinic felt heavier than any road the Daltons had ever traveled. A thick layer of clouds smothered the early afternoon light, turning Boise's familiar streets into a muted, uneasy landscape. Angela sat in the back seat, cradling a small carrier lined with towels. Inside, the 3 unusual pups lay completely silent. Not asleep, not restless, just disturbingly aware. Their stillness gnawed at her nerves. Misty rode in the front passenger seat beside Mark, pacing, unable to settle. Every few seconds she twisted around to check the carrier, whining softly. "It's okay, girl," Mark murmured, though he didn't believe it. The closer they got to the clinic, the more Misty's anxiety escalated. By the time they pulled into the parking lot, she was trembling from fear, from protectiveness, or from something neither of them understood. Angela carefully picked up the carrier. The pups watched her with their eyes still closed, turning their small heads toward the faint sound of her breath as though their senses stretched beyond nature. "I don't like this," she whispered. "You think I do?" Mark replied, shutting the truck door gently. "But we have to know." Inside the clinic, the receptionist hurried them to a private room, her face grave. "Dr. Coleman said to bring you straight back." She glanced nervously at the carrier. "He seemed concerned." Angela managed a weak nod. Minutes later, Coleman entered, holding a tablet and a folder so thin Angela knew the contents had to be something important, something definitive. Misty growled low, not at him, but at what he represented, the man who would take her pups out of her protection. Coleman raised a calm hand. "Easy, girl. I just need to show your family something." He motioned toward the table. "Let's set them here." Angela hesitated. Misty stiffened, but with a deep breath, Angela placed the carrier down. Mark crossed his arms, trying to steady his voice. "Doc, what's going on?" Coleman opened the folder and laid out 3 printed sheets, grainy images captured by a trail camera. Each image showed a creature in the snow near the Sawtooth Range. Its body long and sleek, its forelegs unusually developed, its posture halfway between a dog and something wilder, something faster, something meant to survive the deep woods. "This," Coleman said quietly, tapping the first photo, "was taken 4 months ago near Hell Roaring Lake." Angela's stomach dipped. What? What is that?" "We don't know," Coleman answered. "Biologists treated it as a misidentified wolf-dog hybrid, but the limb structure is wrong. The gait is wrong, and the eye reflection, you see here, resembles nocturnal species." Mark leaned closer. "What does this have to do with Misty?" Coleman looked at him steadily. "Everything." He pulled up a second set of documents on his tablet. Graphs, gene markers, percentages Angela didn't know how to interpret. "I ran the preliminary genetic tests overnight," he said. "The samples I took from the first 12 pups show typical canine markers. Perfectly normal." Angela felt a flicker of relief, until Coleman lifted his eyes again. "But the 3 you brought today," his voice lowered, "they are not fully canine." Angela's breath caught. Mark straightened. Even Misty froze. Coleman continued tapping the screen. "Canine DNA should show high alignment with domestic dog markers. These do not. They diverge in several areas: bone development, sensory genes, early neural activation, traits seen in wild species." "What kind of species?" Angela whispered. Coleman hesitated. "Something in the canid family, but not a wolf, coyote, or fox. These markers match fragments recorded in rare field studies, unconfirmed sightings of an unidentified canid subspecies believed extinct or extremely isolated." "Are you telling me," Mark said slowly, "that Misty mated with something that science doesn't even have a name for?" Coleman nodded. "That's exactly what I'm telling you." Silence washed over the room. Angela felt it like a slow tightening of the chest. "But how?" she asked. "She was only gone a couple hours." "Sometimes," Coleman said gently, "that's all it takes." Misty whined sharply and pressed her nose against the carrier door. Coleman leaned closer to the pups, studying them carefully. "Look here." He pointed to their tiny faces. "See the forehead shape? More tapered. And the jawline, narrower. These aren't deformities. They're inherited traits." He opened the carrier and lifted the reddish pup. It made no sound, just turned its head with unnatural precision toward his voice. "That right there," Coleman said softly, "is early sensory orientation. Impossible at this age." Angela's skin prickled. "What does that mean for them?" Coleman exhaled, the weight of his own uncertainty clear. "It means they will not grow like normal dogs. Their instincts may be stronger, their development faster, their behavior unpredictable." "Unpredictable how?" Mark demanded. I don't know, Coleman admitted. No one has studied a creature like this in captivity, much less in a home. Angela folded her arms, struggling to stay steady. Are they dangerous? Coleman didn't answer at first. He placed the pup back inside, closed the carrier, and stepped back as Misty rushed forward to sniff them anxiously. Finally, he said, They are not dangerous now, but as they develop, I can't promise anything. Mark clenched his jaw. So what do you expect us to do? Hand them over to some lab? Put them down? No, Coleman said quickly. That's not what I'm suggesting. Angela's voice cracked. Then what are you suggesting? Coleman sighed heavily, as if choosing his words with painful precision. I need more time, full sequencing, behavioral observation. If we can understand what species they're crossed with, we'll have a better idea of what to expect. And until then? Mark asked. Coleman looked at Misty, who had planted herself protectively in front of the carrier. Until then, Coleman said, you must keep them inside. No visitors, no trips outdoors, and under no circumstances allow them near other animals. Angela blinked. Why? Coleman paused, then said quietly, because hybrids often inherit the instincts of the dominant wild parent. If that species hunted in packs or communicated over distance, those instincts may surface. The room felt suddenly colder. What are you saying, Doc? Mark whispered. Coleman looked toward the window, toward the tree line beyond the parking lot. I'm saying the father of these pups may not be far, and if they share a bond. He let the implication hang. Angela's voice trembled. It might come looking for them. Coleman nodded once. Solemnly. Mark rubbed his face with both hands. This can't be real. I wish it weren't, Coleman said gently. But Misty knows something. That's why she's guarding them so fiercely. She senses what they are. Angela reached for Mark's hand. What do we do now? Coleman closed the folder and stepped back. Take them home, he said. Keep them safe, and keep your family safe. Come back in 3 days, I'll have more data. Then, Misty barked once. Sharp, nervous, protective. Coleman added quietly, and whatever you hear outside at night, don't go looking for it. The Daltons returned home just as dusk settled over Boise, staining the sky with bruised shades of purple and gray. The truck's headlights swept across their snow-blanketed yard, illuminating a set of fresh prints near the tree line, prints too large, too spaced to be from any dog. Angela stiffened as she stepped out of the vehicle, clutching the carrier with the 3 unusual pups. Misty leapt down immediately, nose lifted, ears pinned back. She smells something, Mark murmured. She's been on edge since we left the clinic, Angela replied, her voice barely steady. Inside, the house felt colder, quieter, as if the walls themselves knew something unwelcome lingered outside. Mark double-checked every lock, front, back, garage, windows. Chloe and Liam hovered in the living room, anxious, whispering questions. Are the puppies okay? Chloe asked. Angela kneeled, brushing her daughter's hair from her face. They're fine, sweetie. They just need quiet for now. But Chloe looked past her, toward the carrier, where the 3 strange pups lay too still, too aware. Liam took a step closer, then froze when the reddish one lifted its small head, turning toward him without opening its eyes. He swallowed. Mom, why do they do that? Angela hesitated. Their senses work differently. It was the only truth she could offer. Misty paced between the living room and the front door, restless, whining low in her throat. She'd never acted this protective, not even with her first litter years ago. Something primal had taken hold. As night deepened, a hard wind rattled the windows. Mark lit a fire, partly for warmth, mostly to calm the room's unsettling stillness. Shadows flickered across the walls like moving shapes. every shift making Angela turn her head sharply. "Let's keep them all in the spare room tonight," Mark suggested, "just till we figure out the plan." Angela nodded. "We stay together. No one sleeps alone." Chloe clutched her stuffed rabbit tighter. Liam tried to appear strong, but Angela saw the fear creeping behind his eyes. Even Mark's steady mask showed cracks. They gathered everything: blankets, water bowls, a space heater, and set up in the spare room. Misty followed closely, guiding her pups with soft nudges. The three hybrids clustered together, then turned as a group toward the doorway, their heads lifting in perfect unison. Angela's breath hitched. "It's like they're listening." "To what?" Liam whispered. Before she could answer, a sound drifted through the house, a faint, distant cry. Not human, not dog. A long, drawn-out wail that tapered into a series of sharp clicks, unnervingly similar to the sounds the pups had made at the clinic. Chloe pressed against Angela's side. "That came from the woods." Mark stepped into the hallway, jaw clenched. "Everyone stays in the room. I'll check outside." Angela grabbed his arm. "No, Coleman said not to go looking." That was before we heard that. Mark glanced toward the back door. "If something's out there, we don't face it alone," she insisted. "Not tonight." Misty barked sharply, turning away from the pups for the first time since they'd gotten home. Her ears were pointed toward the back door, her tail stiff as a rod. Angela whispered, "She hears it too." The wail came again, closer now, followed by another sound, like something heavy moving through snow, then a faint tapping against the fence, like claws testing wood. Chloe whimpered. Liam pulled her close. Mark shut the spare room door softly. "No one opens this tonight." The family and their trembling dog huddled together, waiting for a moment of peace that wouldn't come. Misty finally lay beside her litter, positioning herself so that she could see the door at all times, her muscles coiled, ready. Minutes felt like hours. Every creak of the house sounded unnatural. Every gust of wind felt too deliberate, as though masquerading something else. Angela checked the pups again. They were growing by the hour. She could see it clearly now. Their limbs stretched longer, their fur thicker, their movements more coordinated. "They're changing too fast," she whispered. Mark exhaled shakily. "Coleman said they would." "But not like this," Angela replied. Look how they're standing." One of the pups, still too young to stand, pushed onto its front legs, raising its head. It held itself steady, impossibly steady. "That's not development," she said. "That's instinct." Mark rubbed his face. "We need to bring them back to Coleman tomorrow. No more waiting." But even as he said it, they heard the sound again, this time scraping along the siding. Liam whispered, "Mom, something's out there, right by my window." Angela wrapped her arms around him. "Don't look. Stay near me." Then, suddenly, silence. The house held its breath. No wind, no scraping, no distant wails, just heavy, unnatural stillness. Misty slowly rose to her feet. Her ears twitched, her body trembled, but not in fear, in recognition. Angela whispered, "She knows what it is." Mark knelt beside Misty. "Do you know it's the father?" Misty's chest rose and fell rapidly. She pressed her nose against the crack beneath the door, sniffing hard. Then she let out a small cry, one of longing and warning intertwined. Angela's heart dropped. She's conflicted. She wants to protect them, but part of her wants to go to him. Chloe clung tighter. "She won't leave us, right?" Angela kissed her forehead. "No, sweetie, she won't." But Misty's trembling said otherwise. Meanwhile, inside the carrier, the three strange pups reacted differently than the rest. Their bodies twitched, and they pressed toward the door, noses lifted, whimpering a soft staccato pattern. Click, 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 click. Click. Angela froze. They're answering it. Her voice cracked. Mark looked horrified. You think they understand those sounds? They responded, Mark. Even human babies don't do that. The clicking pattern repeated, faster this time. The pups thrashed in the carrier, not aggressively, just desperately trying to reach the source. Misty shoved her body against the carrier to keep them still, panting, torn between instinct and fear. The scraping sound on the siding came once more. Then, thump. Something heavy struck the back door. Chloe screamed. Liam pulled her down behind him. Misty bristled, barking with a level of terror the Daltons had never heard from her. Angela whispered, "It's trying to get inside." "No," Mark said, forcing steel into his voice. "It's testing the boundary." The creature outside paced slowly, its weight vibrating through the floorboards, its claws dragged in slow, deliberate arcs. Then, after an agonizing pause, the footsteps receded, deeper into the yard, then into the woods. Silence returned. Not peaceful, watchful, predatory. Angela's whole body shook as she clutched Chloe. "We can't stay here. Not like this." "Tomorrow," Mark said. "First light, we bring them to Coleman." He didn't say what they both feared. If the father came to the house once, it would come again. Misty lay beside the pups, her breath steadying as she curled around them protectively. Angela whispered to no one in particular, "What are you? And what happens when you grow?" But none of them slept that night, because the truth had already found its way under their roof, and it wasn't finished yet. The first trace of daylight crept slowly across the Dalton yard, revealing a landscape untouched except for one thing, the single set of prints leading from the forest to the back door. Deep, precise, too large for any dog, too heavy for a coyote. They stopped at the doorstep as if the creature had stood there for a long while, listening. The moment Mark stepped onto the porch and saw them, he slammed the door shut again. "We're leaving. Now." Angela, already packing towels around the carrier, nodded. The three strange pups inside weren't crying. They hadn't cried all night. They lay alert, eerily calm, as if waiting for something. Misty paced back and forth, body taut, eyes locked on the back door like she expected it to burst open at any moment. When Angela knelt to put the carrier down, Misty shoved her head inside, checking each of the unusual pups. Then she looked at Angela and barked once, short, urgent. "I know, girl," Angela whispered. "We're going." The kids, still shaken from the night before, hurried into their jackets. Chloe asked the question Angela had feared. "Will it come back?" Mark answered before his wife could. "We're not going. To be here to find out." But as they loaded into the truck, Misty froze. She looked toward the woods. The hair along her spine rose. A sound carried faintly over the wind. Soft, rhythmic clicking. The same pattern the pups had echoed last night. Angela felt a chill crawl up her arms. "It's calling them." Misty bolted for the truck bed and planted herself beside the carrier, blocking the pups with her body. Whether she was defending them or holding them back, no one could tell. The drive to the clinic felt longer than yesterday's. Even the kids sensed something closing in behind them. Angela checked the mirrors constantly, half expecting a shadow to break from the tree line and follow. Halfway down the road, Liam whispered, "Mom, did you see that?" "See what?" Something moved in the trees. Running. Angela didn't look. She couldn't. If she saw anything keeping pace with their truck, she feared she would scream. At the clinic, Dr. Coleman was waiting outside with 2 staff members. He waved them inside quickly, checking the parking lot with the expression of a man who'd hoped he was wrong about something, and now knew he wasn't. "Bring them straight to exam room 3, he instructed, locking the door behind them. Inside, the air felt different, heavier, as if even the walls knew they were harboring something unnatural. Coleman approached the carrier slowly. "Any changes overnight?" Mark's voice was steady, but his hands weren't. Something came to the house. It wants them. Coleman inhaled sharply but didn't look surprised. I suspected as much. The genomic markers matched traits consistent with pack bonding. The sire may have a biological drive to reunite with its offspring. Angela stepped back, holding her arms close. Then what do we do? How do we keep it from following us? Coleman didn't answer immediately. He knelt beside the carrier, opened it carefully, and studied the pups once more. Their limbs were visibly longer than yesterday, their fur thicker, their coordination sharper. These pups will outgrow domestic canine development within days, he said. Not weeks, days, and their instincts. We have no way of predicting where they'll lead. Angela's breath hitched. Are we supposed to give them up? To the government? To research labs? No, Coleman said firmly. That's not what I want. Then what? Mark asked. Coleman looked at Misty. First, we need to separate them from their mother. Misty instantly snapped her head up. Teeth bared, not in attack, but in sheer panic. She shoved her body fully in front of the pups. Angela shook her head. You saw how she was last night. She won't let anyone near them. Coleman nodded. Because she knows what they are. The room went dead silent. Finally, he said the words aloud. These pups are part dog, and part something we haven't classified. A species that's been rumored in deep wilderness reports for years. A predator with advanced nocturnal sense perception, unusual pack communication, and early neural maturity. Mark's voice was hoarse. So what are they? Coleman exhaled slowly. They're hybrids, not dogs, not wolves. Something older, something feral, something adapted to survive in the darkest parts of the sawtooth. Angela's pulse hammered in her ears. And we're supposed to raise them? No, Coleman answered gently. You can't. They will begin showing predatory traits far too early, and they'll be confused, torn between domestication and instinct. Chloe burst into tears. But they're Misty's babies. Angela pulled her into her arms, tears burning in her own eyes. The pups weren't evil. They hadn't chosen to be born this way, but loving them wouldn't change what they were becoming. Coleman took a step forward. There is one option, not an easy one, not one I suggest lightly. Mark braced himself. Say it. We return them where they belong, the vet said. Into the wild. Not alone, but to the sire. Angela recoiled. No, you're asking us to give them to whatever that thing is? It's the only place where their instincts will make sense, where they won't be a danger to you or themselves. It was the most logical answer. It was also the most painful. But before the Daltons could respond, Misty suddenly lunged toward the window, barking violently. Coleman rushed to pull down the blinds, but not fast enough. Angela saw it, just for a second. Beyond the parking lot, at the edge of the snowy woods, stood a tall, lean shape. Its fur was dense, mottled, bristling in the cold. Its glowing amber eyes reflected the morning sun. It stood too still, too aware, its posture eerily intelligent. It wasn't a wolf. It wasn't a dog. It was waiting, calling, claiming. The three strange pups in the carrier began clicking, softly at first, then louder. The exact same rhythm as the creature outside. Angela clutched her chest. It knows we're here. Coleman grabbed the carrier and shut it tightly. We don't have time. It tracked you. It will not leave without them. Mark stepped forward, voice strained. Doc, tell us the truth. If we open that carrier, if we hand them over, what happens to Misty? Coleman looked at Misty, the trembling mother who would do anything to protect or reclaim her litter. She'll follow them, he whispered, or fight for them. Angela felt her knees weaken. I can't lose her. Then don't let her choose, Coleman said gently. This is not her world, and they are not her future. Outside, the creature stepped closer. It was now or never. Mark placed his hand on the carrier. Angela placed hers over his. The kids cried softly behind them. Misty whimpered, pacing, torn apart by instincts she couldn't reconcile. "Angela," Mark murmured, voice breaking, "we have to let them go." Tears blurred her vision. "But they're babies. They're not ours," he whispered. "Not really." Coleman unlocked the back door of the clinic, opening it to the quiet, snowy clearing. The creature stood waiting. Mark carried the pups to the threshold. Angela held Misty tight as the dog shook violently, crying out in a way Angela had never heard. Not barking, not growling, mourning. Mark set the carrier down and opened it. The 3 pups stepped forward, not fumbling, not afraid. They moved with strange grace, their tiny bodies answering the call of something ancient. The creature bowed its head, and the pups went to it. In the silence that followed, the father turned once, just long enough for Angela to see a depth of intelligence in its eyes that she knew she would never forget. Then it disappeared into the trees, taking them with it. Misty collapsed against Angela, trembling, eyes filled with a grief no one could ease. Mark knelt beside her, whispering, "You did your job, girl. You kept them safe." Coleman closed the door quietly. "It's over," he said softly. But Angela knew better. Not over, just understood. The pups weren't dogs. They never were.